This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by Sterling Soap. Go to STIRLING soap.com and check out their full line of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne. It's April 16th, and on this day in 1976, Ontario's Attorney General Roy McMurtry issued arrest warrants for 3 Philadelphia Flyers for assault in fights that occurred during an NHL playoff game the previous night. Now, there was a growing concern about the escalating violence in hockey. McMurtry's action on this day was precipitated by a horrible incident in a World Hockey Association game a few weeks prior between the Calgary Cowboys and Quebec Nordiques. The Nordiques' top scorer, Marc Tardif, suffered a concussion after an altercation with Calgary's Rick Jodzio. Jodzio faced assault charges a month later, but those charges were eventually dismissed. Now, McMurtry believed that if hockey could not police itself and protect its players, then the government needed to step in. Well, on this day, arrest warrants were issued for Flyers Don Selesky, Joe Watson, and Mel Bridgman for their roles in fights in a 5-4 Philly loss in which 42 penalties were called. There were altercations between players and fans. A policeman had gotten hit in the head with a stick behind the penalty box, and after the game ended, McMurtry was quoted as saying, "I hate to think that it may be necessary to send a hockey player to jail before these people wake up to their responsibility. Hockey has to be the only body contact sport in the world that allows fighting, and in fact, in my view, actively encourages it." When the warrants were issued and the players arrested outside their hotel, Flyers officials and fans all decried the act as a means to disrupt the series in Toronto's favor. Philadelphia's district attorney accused McMurtry of a clear perversion of the office in which he sits. Now, if they were in fact convicted of the crimes in which they were accused, they faced up to 5 years in prison. But eventually, Joe Watson pled guilty and he paid a fine. The charges against Don Selesky and Mel Bridgman were dropped. On this day in 1961, the Chicago Blackhawks ended their 23-year Stanley Cup drought, beating Gordie Howe and the Detroit Red Wings 5-1 to win the Stanley Cup. Interesting fact, Blackhawks goalie Glenn Hall is the last goalie to play every single minute of every game and win the Stanley Cup. Now, Boston's Eddie Johnston is recognized as the last NHL goalie to play every minute of every game when he did it in the 1963-64 season, but the Bruins did not even make the playoffs that season. For the Blackhawks, it was their 3rd Stanley Cup title, but they'd have to wait another 39 years for their 4th. Also on this day in sports history, in 1940, Cleveland Indians pitcher Bob Feller became the first and still only pitcher to throw a no-hitter on the opening day of the season. On this day in 1929, the New York Yankees and the Cleveland Indians wore numbers on the back of their uniforms. Now, this was not the first time teams had affixed numbers to their jerseys, but this is the point that it finally stuck and became commonplace. Previous attempts had been mocked for making the players look like convicts. The Yankees used the numbers to correspond to their hitting order, which is why Babe Ruth wore number 3 and Lou Gehrig wore number 4. On this day in 1946, Major League Baseball Commissioner Happy Chandler announced that any player jumping to the newly established Mexican League would be penalized with a 5-year ban. On this day in 1999, the great one, Wayne Gretzky, announced his retirement from the NHL. And in 2000, the New England Patriots selected quarterback Tom Brady from the University of Michigan in the 6th round of the NFL Draft. Time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. Did you know that there is actually an average color to the universe? In a 2002 study, astronomers found that the light coming from galaxies averaged into a beige color that they called cosmic latte. Order that from your local barista today and see what you get. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.